Hello everybody and welcome to my studio. My name is Lonna and I just want to say thank you for stopping by. I am here to teach you how to paint with acrylics. So if you stop by my YouTube channel, you've stopped by to learn to paint with acrylics. So while you're here, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you're notified every single time I have a video. And please like, share, and comment on my videos. It all helps my YouTube channel to grow so that I can bring you more content like this great video we're going to be doing today. So what are we painting today? Let's take a look. We're going to be painting, quote, the Raven. This is a super fun Halloween project. Lots of fun technique in the moon and the background as well, which just doesn't quite show. There's purples in the background and teals in the background, so it's going to be a really fun project. So I cannot wait to paint this with you guys. So let's grab our paint and our brushes and let's get started. Okay, we're going to start on this design right here, and I have my surface here, which is my tavern sign, and it comes cut in masonite. This is just a piece of scrap MDF that I had my husband cut for me to paint on, but yours will be the exact same dimensions and shape, but it will be made out of MDF. I mean masonite. I'll get it right. Okay, so I have already applied a coat of multi-purpose sealer with a dampened sponge all over the entire surface and the edges. If you're going to paint on the back, do the back as well. You might as well. I mean, you can use these signs as dual surfaces, so you might as well multi-purpose on both sides, so when you're ready to paint something on the opposite side of it for a dual purpose sign, it will be ready to go. So dampened artist sponge, multi-purpose sealer, one nice coat on there, and you're good to go with that. And then I have my circle transferred on here. Now you can transfer it from the line drawing, or you can use a bowl. This is just plastic, like disposable almost type bowl. It came from the dollar store. I think there was like 3 in the package or something. I don't remember. I've had it for quite a while. Could have just been 2. And so I set it on here. This is about the size that I want my moon to be. So find something that is a close enough circle, because that will make it a little bit easier to transfer that circle on there. So we're going to apply some paint on the background now. And I am going to be using Royal Navy. If you don't have Royal Navy, you can use Ultramarine Blue. It's a good alternative to this color. And we're just going to apply a loose coat on the background, and I like to base coat with some older brushes, not my really good ones, because, you know, it just works out best that way, I think. And I'm going to go up to my circle. I'm going to tap on my paper towel to remove a little bit of the paint and just kind of blur that out where that circle is. I can come back and retrace my circle, but I don't want there to be a hard line where that circle is. So we're going to base coat the entire background and just work up to that circle. It's okay if you go in it a little bit. We're going to be painting it, so don't worry about it. Ultramarine Blue will be a little bit more transparent than this color, so you could add a little bit of, if you add white, it's really going to lighten it up, so maybe another blue that you like, that could make it a little bit, that has a white base coat that you like, that could just slightly make the blue paint a little more opaque. Otherwise, if you're using just straight ultramarine blue, you'll have to do a couple of coats probably, because it's just a little more transparent. So we just want a nice thin coat, just loosely going over that line right there. I'm not going to worry about that line. I am not painting, like, I'm not edging around it, because that is going to cause a line and a lip on there, and we don't want that. We want this to be a little bit more, you know, I don't want to say spooky, but a little bit more Halloween fun, I guess. And so we don't want any hard lines. This is going to be a little bit different of a design here. So I'm going to get my edges painted in off camera. I've just got scrap paper laying down so I don't get paint all over my surface. And I'm going to get my, this is already almost completely dry. It's still pretty wet over here where I just put it. But I'm going to get my edges painted and come back and we'll do some technique in the background. Okay, my background is dry. Now I kind of want to do a stippling technique in the background, a little bit of wet on wet. So I'm going to take my base color of my Royal Navy or Ultramarine Blue if you're using that color, and make a wash of this color. I want to make a good amount because I want to cover an area well with it. And before I apply it, I'm going to take my stippling sponge. Now this is one of the stippling sponges that I sell. It comes in a set of 2, and I'm getting low on them and I haven't been able to find this particular material lately, so once I run out I may be out. But anyway, you can get a set of 2 of these for $1, and I took one and cut it down into a smaller piece. You can use whichever size you want. I think I will use the big one and show you how to manipulate the bigger one. So I want to get it completely filled up with water in my clean water out of my water basin. Wring it out. Take it to a paper towel and squeeze out the excess moisture. We just want it to be damp. Okay, that's so our sponge doesn't fill up with paint. If it doesn't have that moisture in there, it won't release it out of the sponge. It'll just soak it up and keep it in there. And then we waste a lot of paint that way. So I'm going to kind of roll this up, squeeze it up a little bit like this when I use it, and it will be like a pouncing sponge. But I'm going to put some different colors on here first. So I've got my base color out here, and I've got lavender and Indian turquoise and black, lamp black. The Indian turquoise may not be bright enough. I may have to go to a brighter turquoise. So I went and grabbed just some regular turquoise. You can kind of see the difference here. So I'm going to try with the Indian turquoise, but I'm afraid it's going to just really go back into the background too much, and I'm going to end up using that one. So I'm going to take my sponge and I'm going to load a little bit of each color. This lavender is really, really thick on here, and just some, each in a different place. Okay, I've got the black. We don't need very much black. And then I'll grab some of my base color on here. Okay, so I've got all those colors on there. When I go back to grab turquoise, I may go back and grab that darker turquoise. So I want to put a wash of this base color on here, right through here. Get it damp. We can do probably about half of this because it's such a small piece, and then come back and do the other half. So now I have my paint and I'm ready to go here. So I want to start tapping in some of these colors in the background. Where's my black at? There it is. And just using, I'm going to go to an area that doesn't have paint, and just gently, I'm going to have to lift this up because I can't see from the glare what I'm doing here, and gently model and tap and rub it in. But we want a little bit of all of those colors. So if you have to get a second sponge to manipulate and do these colors, or go to the back side of your sponge, which I do a lot, and I tap and twist and blur this out, and it gives a super cool look into the background. We'll probably do this a couple of times because I really want it to be a little bit more pronounced in the background. I don't want it to be so soft and faded back in there. I'm also going to spritz my palette with some water, because some water is going to help me be able to move. So when my paint feels like it's drying up on my sponge, I'll just grab some water over here so I can manipulate the paint a little bit. And I'm already dried up down here, so I'm going to grab some water, a little bit of my base color, put some purple in down here. It's a messy thing, so you might want to wear a glove, especially if you've got a nice manicure. You don't want to be jeopardizing your manicure. So we're just going to stipple this in the background and take the wet edge and move it around and put more color where you feel like you need more color. And we're going to do this a couple of times. So don't worry too much about the first layer, how it looks. It's, you know, just our first layer. So I might go to my smaller piece of sponge when I go do my second layer because this bigger one is a little bit full of paint. So I'm going to grab that other turquoise color because I really think it's going to be the color I'm going to like the best. So I'm going to put purple and the turquoise, not the Indian turquoise, but the turquoise. I'm going to grab a little tiny bit of black. I want to put some black in there. Just make some taps. Now you got to do this wet on wet because if you try doing it when the paint starts drying, you're not going to be able to go anywhere with the blending of it. And I got a little bit too much black over here, so I'll probably have to come back with the second layer and work that out a little bit. So we're just going to work this in all the way around. I definitely need more purple in there. Go to the back side and gently blend. It's just a tapping and twisting and blending out kind of technique. There's nothing like crazy technical about this. You have to be able to tap. Your sponge has to be damp and you have to take that sponge and just very gently as you're tapping, twist it and let it blend out. See right there, I didn't tap enough so it didn't blend out enough. But I'm going to come back and put a second layer on here. I want this layer to get good and dry first. Okay, my paint is completely dry now. I'm going to take a sanding pad, but you can use a brown paper bag to do the same thing. Probably even a folded up piece of paper would work just as well. And just lightly sand. I've got a little bit of raised texture that I don't want on there. And now I'm going to apply another layer on here. I really want to see more of the purples and blues on here. I think this time I might take my smaller sponge and see if I can manipulate it a little bit better with the smaller one. I've got my bigger one here if this one doesn't work out. So clean water, release the moisture in a dry paper towel, and then I'm going to have to reload my lavender I definitely need on here, and my Royal Navy. The other two look like they're damp enough. I can still use those. Lavender and Royal Navy and a little bit of black. So I'm going to be picking up smaller amounts this time as I do this technique. So I'm just at first going to pick up the lavender and the turquoise on my sponge that's starting to wear out and come apart a little bit. I'm going to take my clean paintbrush and just apply some water on here instead of the tinted base coat, because we don't need that this time around. And I'm going to just begin, I'm going to have to lift this up because I get such a glare on here I can't see what I'm doing, and tap these two colors in. Not get too far ahead of myself here. And now I'm just going to go to this dampened edge here and gently twist and blend. This is a very soft pressure, but you must have moisture in your brush or you're not going to get that beautiful blending. I'm going to grab a little bit of the base coat and tap a little bit of that in here, and then go to my blending side and blend. Now, you can do this with a paintbrush if you just want to do a slip slap technique. You can certainly do it with a paintbrush. So, you know, that's an option. It's your choice. If you don't feel comfortable doing it with a sponge. I love doing this technique with the sponge here. I'm going to grab some fresh paint, some turquoise, some lavender, and a little bit of our base color. So the turquoise and the lavender, I want to really tap this in first. I dampened it with the water first. And I'm going to spritz my palette here so I can grab some moisture on my sponge. My damp edge feels a little bit dry. And here we go. Tap and a slight twist. Tap and a slight twist. I'm going to get my base color in there in a couple of places. And go back to my water edge and tap. And soften and lightly twist. We don't really want to see any hard lines on anything. And that's looking really good. I think this side needs a little bit more lavender on it. So I'm going to grab a little bit more and then go to my damp edge and tap and twist and blend. And that's looking pretty good. I think when it dries it will look really good. I want a little bit more. Grab a little water, a little bit more of the turquoise out here, and some lavender, and then I'll go to my water and very gently soften that and blend it out. Such an easy technique to do because the sponge is really doing all the work. You're just manipulating the sponge, whether you want the paint on there and then just a spot where there's not very much paint, mostly water, and softening and twisting and manipulating and moving it out. I do want to put a little bit of the black in here, so I'm going to grab some moisture on my sponge and a tiny little bit of the black. So I'm going to put that on and immediately blend it out because that can take over so much. And our crow is going to be black on here, so we don't want to do too much black. Just a few little taps and blending out in a couple of places is going to help bring all the colors together. It's just a small amount of paint, and then the water edge I'm taking and smoothing out and blending, and a little bit of blue back in there, maybe a little bit of lavender. Kind of lost my lavender there altogether. I'm gonna have to flip over now. I've got too much paint on the other side, and soften that. I had a little bit too much black there, wasn't really liking it, so there we go. I think that looks pretty good. I love that background. When it dries, everything's just going to be soft and subtle in the background. So now we need to let it get completely dry, and then we're going to start working on our moon. Okay, my background is dry. It's got a nice mottled effect there. Now, if you don't want the lavender in there, you can certainly just use the Royal Navy and the turquoise, and maybe just a spot here or there of black, and keep it more of a subtle blue. We probably will do a little bit of shading along the outside edges with some black towards the end of this, but for now I'm pretty happy with it. If at any time I feel like it's too bright or I need a different color in there, I'm just going to put a few little wash layers of those colors in there and bring those colors more forward. So, and it's a real easy fix. Now we want to paint our circle in, but we need to reestablish it. So we are going to put our bowl on here. I'm going to use a white lead pencil. This is Lonna's favorite chalk pencil. It comes with white, pink, and green lead. And so you can use it on any color surface, and it disappears with paint or water. So you don't have to worry about any kind of chalk line being set in your project. So I've reapplied my circle here, so now we're going to paint it in. I'm still just going to continue with that same older base coating brush. I just hardly ever use my really good brushes for putting my base coats in, because it just you know, it wears out the brushes quicker. Okay, so when you're applying a base coat in a large area, you want to use a larger brush. This is a 3/4 inch. You could probably go up to a 1 inch brush. I've dipped my brush in some paint after I woke my brush up. Now you got to wake your brush up in water. Get the bristles completely full of water. You lay it on each side on your paper towel and let it wick out the excess. That should be enough moisture in your water to pull a little bit of paint out and add some water to the paint. You need some water added to your paint because it's just generally too thick straight out of the bottle to get yourself some nice thin layers. Not thin layers, but thinner layer of paint, and just keep adding water as you pull out paint. Now you don't want to go directly to the edge of your circle when you start painting. You want to put your paint out here, and then you can just begin pulling some of it out to the edge and following that circle. I may make this misty around the edge, I haven't decided, but just concentrate on that line and not going past it so you can keep your circle a circle. If you have difficulty doing this part, you can always take some tape and tape along. I have all kinds of these little goobery things in my paint, and tape along the outside of the circle and do it that way. I always put my paint out here away from the circle and kind of work it into my brush almost, and then come out here and just let the very tip of the edge of the brush go along the edge of my line. Don't go past it. You can go right on it or right inside of it, either way, but don't go past it. Breathe, take your time. A little bit of moisture in your paint is going to keep all of this from drying before you can get it all painted in and smoothed out. So this is all still wet, so I can, come in here and smooth out one last section here. I'm not pushing down on the brush, because if I push down on the brush, it's going to leave this really hard, thick line on there, and we don't want that. So we just want a gentle movement of the brush. Okay, so this layer has to get completely dry. If it's still wet, just smooth out a little bit. We don't want to see a lot of ridges or anything like that in this paint. We want it to be a pretty smooth layer when you're done with it. So we need to get this completely dry. Okay, my moon's not dry, but now that I've applied a layer of paint on here, I can see that my background is not where I want it to be. So I'm going to take my brush that I was base coating with, and I'm going to dip into some turquoise. Make sure I have water spritzed on my palette so I can grab water as I need it. And I'm going to apply more blue in the background. I feel like it needs more blue, so I'm just going to tap some in, and with the water edge, kind of manipulate it and move it around. I want more of that turquoise in here. No hard lines, no yucky. If you still have your dampened sponge, mine's too full of water because I just washed it out, you can gently tap and smooth that as well. But I definitely want to see a little bit more of this bright turquoise. And I've just side loaded a wetter mixture than I normally do. And then we can just, that side of the sponge is really wet. Tap and soften and kind of manipulate. I'm probably going to have to go into some purple here. So this is how you can add a little bit more into your background if you feel like it's not quite where you want it. Just tap some in there and take your finger and move it around, manipulate it, soften it. All those things will help with the color. I don't want these two colors to blend necessarily. And that's got a lot of water right there. Touch that with my hand so I can remove some of that water. Alright, finger, tap, blend. I need more turquoise here. I want a little bit more out here. Okay, so you see how we can kind of manipulate that just a little bit. So I'm going to come over here. While it's wet, use your finger, soften it out. You can use the sponge as well if you feel like it. Fingers are our best tools in doing a lot of this, so don't be afraid to use them. I got a good amount of purple there, but I think I need some turquoise. So this is where, while your moon is drying, this is where I want you to take your background colors and really look at it now that you have a layer in your moon, and see what you want to do. That purple really, that lavender really softens down in there very quickly, so you may not want to tap it as much because we want to keep that color on top. Let's see, right over here, I feel like it needs it. That's a little bit. I'm going to dampen that. And reapply some. See if I can't. A little bit too much water in there now. Put a little purple in there. Lavender, not purple. Definitely had something in my brush there. That was chunky, chunky, chunky. Didn't like it. So I'm just going to remove it and go back to my turquoise here. And dry my finger off so it doesn't take it out too far. So if you don't have the sponge and you don't like to slip slap, this is another way to texturize your background. Just tap it in there and texturize it with your finger. You got to have pretty wet paint to do this with just a little bit of water in it, so you don't get too much. I'm running out of lavender here. You might want to use a different finger for tapping for the lavender so you don't blend your turquoise into that lavender. But I think that gives it a little bit more of an eerie mist that I kind of was wanting to go for. And just, you know, there's no right or wrong to your background. However it looks is going to be awesome, because once we get it completed, this pushes to the back, so we won't see a whole lot of it. So I want you to be sure and make your background how it appeals to you. It's such a fun thing to play around with your paints and even to finger paint with them. You know, just get in there and be messy. Don't worry about that. Just make sure before you go to the next color of paint that you're going to be using that you clean your hands off so you don't reactivate the paint on your fingers and blend it into a color you don't want it to be in with. So that is how I fix the background once I get my yellow in. So I want another coat of yellow on here. I'll just go off camera and apply that and let it dry, and then we'll come back and start doing more to our moon here. I did want to jump in here and tell you that on your second layer it can be more of a wash. Boy, I got a lot of chunky lunkies in there. It can be more of a wash with this layer because you're just filling in the gaps where that base coat didn't quite get solid, and don't worry about going out to the edge all the way. You've already been there, so you don't have to worry about that. So I've mixed some water with my paint, and it's not a wash. It's more a glaze of color because it has a lot more paint in it than a wash would have. And all I'm doing is putting it on here and smoothing out that first layer that I put on. So it gives us a nice smooth foundation to start building on. And then we're going to let this dry and start building our moon from here. Okay, let us start on this moon here. Now we're going to be just adding colors kind of randomly in here. I've got an idea of where I'm going with my moon, so we just want to play around with adding color. I don't want you to be technical about this. Kind of how we did it in the background here is kind of how we're going to do it on the moon. So I'm just going to stay with this older flat brush that I base coated and did everything in with. You do not have to use an older one now since we're going to be painting. This one's still pretty decent brush. It's a 3/4 inch flat, but you can certainly go to a smaller one. And I want to start adding some colors onto my palette here. We're going to want some brighter yellows on here. So we're going to add yellow light. And bright yellow. Both of these, I'm not sure which one will do the effect that I want better, but I'm going to put them both out. If we end up not using one, that's okay. I'm going to put some white out here as well because we'll need it, and some antique gold, and then we're going to have a varying array of oranges. I don't know. I'm really thinking right now I won't use orange at all. I wanted some orange to be in the moon. Maybe some burnt orange. I think we'll use maybe some burnt orange. I think I'll leave the other brighter oranges out because I want this to be more of a eerie kind of moon. So that's burnt orange, and we're going to have burnt sienna. And we'll put a little bit of black out, and then our base color of moon yellow. We'll want that color out as well. And I've got quite a bit of each one, but you probably won't need that much. I would say just put out about a nickel size, and if you need more, you can always add to it. Alright. So I've got Snow White, yellow light, bright yellow, antique gold, burnt orange, burnt sienna, lamp black, and our base color of moon yellow. And I want some water spritzed on my palette right here. And my brush has been woke up in the water. It's nice and ready to go. I filled it up with water, laid it on my paper towel this side, then laid this side, and that should wick out enough water for what we need to do. You want it to be moist but not dripping wet. Okay, so we're going to start with our lighter color and even see if we can see it in here yet. And I've just got a little bit on the corner of this brush, and I'm just going to add some of this in and I'm just tapping it in loosely. Not floating it, but I'm doing the same technique that I did out here with it. And I want to keep the lighter stuff more on this upper, like 2/3 of the moon. And I kind of want to do maybe a little bit of wet into wet, so I'm going to go over into antique gold and grab a little bit of that and tap some of that in. This is really just a loose tapping. People who are very controlled and tight with their painting, this technique may be a little bit more difficult for them. I picked up a little bit of water so that I could smooth out a little bit easier. And I'm going to start bringing some of this antique gold down into the moon a little bit more. I want more of the antique gold up here, so I'm going to grab some more water and some more antique gold and go up here and put a little bit. I think we'll have to come back with some brighter yellows in there. And this is just very messily doing this. I don't want you to worry about how it looks at the moment, because we're going to be putting several layers of paint on here. And I like doing it this way, just using water to create little layers of paint on here, as opposed to using some blending medium or glazing medium or anything like that, because they take so long to dry, and I want my layers to dry very, very quickly so that I can move into my next color. They do not have to be completely dry, because having them blend into each other is going to be helpful for creating some different effects in here. So I'm still just continuing with the antique gold and laying it in here and there, random stuff. Okay, now I'm not going to clean my brush, but I will wipe the antique gold off just in case I have quite a bit of it built up on the end of my brush. So now I think I'm going to go into a little bit of the burnt orange, and let's mix some antique gold in with that. I think the burnt orange might be too bright of a jump, so we'll add some. I just did a 1-to-1, dipped one time in each one, and now I'm just tapping this. I'm keeping it a little more down to the bottom. Oop, let's not get it into our background. So I want to get a damp brush, and keep a damp brush handy for cleaning up outside my moon here, because it's going to happen. There's just no way it's not going to happen. So just tap and move the brush and swirl the brush and use it like you used the sponge, where you take the water edge and blend out. We did that with the sponge. We took the water edge of the sponge and blended it out. But you need to have, when you mix more on your brush, you need to have some water in there so it mixes nicely. So we're starting to create a little bit more of a moon effect here. Some nice layers building up. I'm going to wash my brush now, because I want to create some brighter areas in here. So I'm going to take my white and my bright yellow and mix those together. Maybe I should take the white and the bright yellow, because the bright yellow looks more golden. Yeah, let's take the white and the bright yellow, and we want to add some of this in here and just create some bright areas, kind of where the light is hitting the moon just a little bit more. And don't make this opaque. We don't want it to be opaque. So I'm going to wash my brush out. We're going to start on another layer of paint here. I'm going to go into that bright yellow because I really like that color. And I want some of this in here. And I'm going to start bringing this down just a little bit more into the moon. This is just layer upon layer of colors so that we can build some really awesome depth in here. Okay, I am going to switch over to an angle brush now. Mine's just a 1/2 inch, but if you have a bigger one, that would probably work best. I'm going to take my antique gold and a little bit of raw sienna. Probably 2 raw sienna to 1 antique gold. And I want to start applying this. This is going to be a much darker color. You see I'm taking the water edge of my brush, tapping out. I can use my finger, smooth out. Don't be afraid to use your fingers, finger paint. Just remember, if you're changing a color, you want to remove the paint that's on your finger so you don't blend it in with another color, because once it is wet and reactivates, that color will blend with whatever paint you're tapping into. Alright, so this is antique gold once and burnt sienna at least twice. I think twice will give us a nice color. And you notice I'm staying a little bit more to the edges out here with this color and just pulling it out and scooting it out and, you know, moving it around. So now I need water in my brush, so I'm going to grab water and a little bit more paint. And I'm going to continue around the edge and keeping it wet and pulling it and moving it and not letting it create any kind of hard spot on here. That is the most important thing, is we don't want to have a buildup of layers that are just, see, I'm just wiggling it in, pulling it in, taking my finger, letting it smooth out, creating some super fun colors. And I can see I need more water now. Move that around and mix some more, 1 to 2. And look at the effect we're getting on this moon. I just think it is amazing. A little bit more water here. Oop, that's probably too much water, because I need more paint now. I want some really dark areas right in here. Now you can use a mop brush to do this as well, but when you use your finger, you get those really awesome textures in here that you can't get when you use a mop brush. So make sure you have no hard lines on there. And we're keeping this color up on the upper 2/3 of our moon here. Do this edge down here. We don't really want to see any of the moon yellow on the edge, so we're not outlining it, but we are making sure that our edge is covered with this color, and then pull out from that edge and just create some wonderful effects on this moon. Alright, let me mix a little more here. And I'm going to continue all the way around the moon with this, doing a little section of the edge at a time, and then going up into the moon and bringing some of that color up into the moon. Don't go out past your moon. Angle brush is going to be the best one to use for this, so you can keep it pretty tight in there. Mixing a little bit more here. I just mix as I go. It doesn't matter to me if the color mix is exactly the same. We don't want anything to be exact here. A little bit around this edge. And now I want to pull some of this. And some places you'll lay in darker color than you will other places, especially on the lower part of the moon. It'll be a little bit darker. So look how just adding that color around the outside edge has really shaped this moon up and brought it a little bit more forward for us. I mean, that is looking so amazing. So that was just with a mix of antique gold and burnt sienna. We went all the way around the edges, did a little section at a time, pulled it in, wiggled it, messed it around, did some in the middle of the moon, and now we're starting to create a little bit more darker values. So you can see that we got some really dark stuff going through here. We want to bring, I'm going to do a little bit more of this down here below because I want more darker stuff starting to happen down here. But just some little places of it. Let's not get too carried away, but we do want to start making some darker with this color in a few places, so let's do that. And so we're building up a nice layer of this color. That was again with our antique gold and our burnt sienna. 1 antique gold, 2 burnt sienna, all the way around, doing a small section at a time. I feel like I needed to repeat that for you so that you understand that we're just not going around the entire moon in one big float of color, because we're creating the layers in here that we need for depth. So now this layer needs to dry so we can come back and add our next one. Okay, I really want to start adding some really bright places over here on the moon. So I'm going to take my white and my bright yellow, or the light yellow light, whichever one you have. They both will work just fine. And I'm going to do more white than yellow this time. So let's try 2 white to 1 yellow. If it's still too yellow, we'll add a little bit more white, because we can glaze over this later. But I want to create some like extremely bright areas on here. And we will come over this probably later and add some wash of color on here to settle it down a little bit more into the moon. So just a few places where I want probably stay out of the dark areas there a little bit and concentrate it more on these lighter places in the moon. And it's still the same kind of look. It's just a wiggle kind of, and building some layers. Let me spritz some more water here on my palette. And keeping this more in the upper left part of our moon. And we're going to just start creating a little bit more bright stuff going on. I added another a little bit more yellow into this one. It's going to be the brightest over here. As we come out from that, it's not going to be quite as bright, so we can add a little bit more yellow to the mix and kind of soften that down a little bit. But we do want some of this going on in several places, so don't be afraid of this. We will be putting washes and things in here and taking all of this down just a little bit. And we don't want them to be fat little areas. We need them to be more narrow and kind of spreading out and flowing, almost like the moon is on fire inside, and this is where it's burning coming out, if that makes sense. I'm going to go into a little bit more of my bright yellow because I want some more yellow areas in here. And through here. So this is with the white and yellow mix. And then as we build our way down, we'll just continue to add more yellow in here for some brighter areas. And all of these steps may have to be done more than once to really get an awesome effect on your moon. Just get past how it looks right now, because you know the ugly stages are truly the hardest parts for most of us to get through. We just hate that ugly stage and we can't see where it's going because right now it just looks ugly. So you just have to trust the process of what you're doing. Sometimes you have to stand back and look at it because that makes a huge difference in how you see things. And sometimes taking a photograph. I take photographs of my stuff all the time, or hold it up to a mirror and look at it in the mirror, because you can see the places that need a little bit of something done to them. Okay, I'm not going to come down any farther than this. I think this is going to be far enough. So I think we're going to leave that white and yellow mix, and then I added it's still white and yellow, but I added another little bit more yellow into it and brought that down a little bit more down here, so that we can play around with this a little bit more. And it's just this is where you get to have so much fun, because when you can learn to paint with just loosely, and you don't really care where it goes at the moment, then that's what makes painting so much more fun. And I was told by another designer, and she was taught by a very renowned artist, that where your paintbrush goes on the canvas, go with it, because that's where it's meant to be. So unless you drop your brush, you probably didn't mean for it to be there, but where you go with it, that's where it's meant to be, and just let it go. Just let it flow and let it go. So I want this layer to dry so we can move on to a little bit more brighter, intense colors. Okay, our next layer is going to be just straight burnt sienna. Now, when you think of the moon, I want you to think of this as the lower 1/3 of the moon right here. It's like a big smiley face that goes through here, and this is the lower 1/3, and this is the upper 2/3 of the moon. We're going to concentrate more on the lower 1/3 with this color and start creating a little bit brighter areas. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I want to start with I might start with burnt orange and make it not quite so intense to begin with. So let's do a little bit of burnt orange in here. Just straight burnt orange. I have water in my brush. You have to have water in your brush to do this. And then we're adding our next layer on here. So make sure you keep water in your brush. So we're just doing this. We'll bring a little bit into the center. Now, you know, a lot of this moon is going to be covered up by our crow, but this gives you an opportunity to know how to paint a really cool moon. And if you ever want to paint a moon like this on something else, then you can. Okay, so that was just with burnt orange. So I'm going to wipe my brush off now. Make sure I've got some moisture in it. And now we'll go into just burnt sienna. And I want to put this in some of the same places that I put the burnt orange, because this is going to really intensify that burnt orange a little bit and really give us some super amazing effects down here on the lower part of the moon. And you don't have to go over the exact spots you went over, but you know, some of it on there close is good. A little bit more water here. Now, if your burnt orange is not quite dry enough, then let it dry before you add the burnt sienna on here. I'm going to start putting this a little more on the lower edge of our moon, like we did that other color, and bringing it up into the moon. Wow, this moon is looking awesome. I think I'm going to take a little bit of burnt orange on my brush. It's mixing a little bit with that other color and put a little bit of this on the outside of our moon. So when you're doing your burnt orange for your previous layer, you can just go ahead and work it around the outside edge of the moon like we did with the first layer we put on there, but we don't necessarily need to bring this in a long ways. You know what I mean? We need to bring it in because we are floating the color in here. We need a little bit of that orange to go in other places, but we mostly want to keep it down here. We want this area to stay brighter, this area to stay darker, but I do feel like we need a little bit more of the burnt orange in here, and it can be the burnt orange and antique gold mix, so you just play around with it based on how your moon is looking, but we do need a few a little bit darker patches up here in our moon a little bit, and don't cover up all your bright spots. We still need to keep those. So it is looking really good here. Okay, I'm liking how that's looking. I want this layer to dry so we can come back and start adding some of our more darkest layers and getting it shaped a little bit more how we like it. Now before we go on to doing more to our moon, I want to get my background a little bit darker, and I knew I was going to have to do this along the way. So we're going to take our royal navy and our black and mix them together. 2 royal navy, 1 black, I think will make a nice color. And we're going to go around our moon. This color, we really need it to be darker in the sky, and we may have to do this a couple of times. This is a float, but I have water in my brush so that I won't just lay down a hard line. That's key. If you don't have the water in there, then it's just going to create a super crazy hard line and you will not be happy. So every time you pick up paint, you pick up water, you blend them together. Try not to lose the shape of your moon. If you need to draw the line on here, see I kind of lost the shape down there, but I'm not going to worry too much about that because you know our crow is going on here and it's going to cover up that lower part right there. I'm going to mix a little bit more here. Oops. A nice big brush will get this job done so much faster. So don't try to use some tiny little brush because you won't be happy. You will get frustrated, and water in your brush key. You cannot do this without the moisture. It is impossible. It is really impossible to float at all without the moisture in your brush. And don't be afraid of adding the water in your brush because, I mean, you know, it evaporates. So, nothing to worry about there. I'm mixing more paint. So I can bring this out just a little bit further. I'm really not worried too much about the bottom because it will be covered by a bird. But you want to make sure your first layer is dry because if not, you will just lift your paint. And then we'll let it dry and see if we need to intensify that any, but we definitely needed it darker. And we might just go ahead while we're here and add a little bit of darkness to the edges. So all of our beautiful work we did in the background, a lot of it is going to fade into the background, which is fine. I'm going to go along the edge here with a little bit of color and at the corners. I'm not going to worry too much about that edge. It's mostly the corners we want to worry about, because some of this we may not see, and we can always come back to it and add to it if we need to. But we want our corners to be dark, and that's just with that same mix, that blue-black mix that we put around the moon. And that's kind of going to settle everything where we need it to be. And that's looking good. We can still see our gorgeous stuff that we did in the background. And that's going to help when we finish out our moon to make the moon continue to look a little more 3D. Now, you can also just paint your background black if you want. You don't have to do the different colors that I put in there. But I thought it looked super cool in there, so you want to do that if you want. Totally optional for you. So let's move on to our burnt sienna and black. So we'll do 3 burnt sienna and 1 black on here. And we'll start bringing some darker stuff into our moon. Definitely want to get the edge, but we want to move this around the whole entire lower part of our moon. So plenty of water in your brush, and you can do this pretty quickly. 2 burnt sienna, 1 black. Actually, I think we'll do 3 burnt sienna and 1 black. For our next layer, we will get even darker. A little bit of moisture. My palette. Mix a little more. 1, 2, 3, 1. I want it to lean more towards the burnt sienna side, so if it starts looking too dark, too black, and you want to take that down and fix it. We don't want it to be crazy dark yet. We are going to make some really dark areas on here. I'm going to take a little bit of this and bring it up on this edge of the moon. A little bit. Boy, my moon lost a little bit of its shape there. And we'll kind of darken just slightly around the outside edge. Just a little wash of this color. This is all layering. I love painting and building with layers, guys. It is so much fun. I just can't begin to tell you how much fun it is. So that is our next layer, and that was 3 burnt sienna and 1 lamp black. So we'll darken that here on our next layer, but I want this layer to get dry because I don't want to lift any layers. Each layer really needs to take its time to dry so we don't lift any. Okay, before we go and do another layer on the bottom, I want to put a wash on the moon up here of bright yellow. And it shouldn't really take down your highlights once that dries. It should settle in there, and we should retain our highlights. And that's on the upper 2/3, and then on the lower 2/3 I want to put a wash of burnt orange down here. Burnt orange. It means it's mostly water, a little bit of paint. We're just tinting water is all we're doing. And then where they come together, we can gently blend them. And that is going to create a beautiful look on here. All right, we've got to get this layer dry. Okay, our moon is looking amazing. We've just got a couple more steps to do on it and it will be done. And I know you may be feeling like that is so many layers for a moon, but these are just washes of color, and we've just put them on lightly and loosely, and you really need to do that for this effect. So just hang in there. It's not that big of a moon. Each step goes very quickly. I'm going to grab some black and some burnt sienna out. Oh, my burnt sienna's got some kind of chunky in it. Okay, let's see. Alright, I'm going to stick with my angle brush here, like I've been using on this moon. Now I want a much darker color on here, really super dark. So I'm going to take my burnt sienna and my black. I'm going to go to a clean spot on my palette here. I'm going to do an equal mix here, which is going to make a really dark color, but it's not going to make it quite pure black, so we won't have to worry about it you know, being too dark. And this isn't going to be put everywhere. We want to make some really crazy dark places on this. And let's see, I want some up here in the moon as well. Again, remember, we're just kind of wiggling the brush around and smoothing any rough edges. Let me get some more water spritzed on my palette here so I can grab water very quickly as I need it. It's a 1-to-1 mix here. And we're just keeping it on this one side and at the bottom. More towards the right side. A little bit more black in the mix there. That was just a little bit too much burnt sienna. We couldn't distinguish a value change there, so we needed a little bit more darker color. I want some dark here. We can make some little areas in here and come up this way just a little bit. Oh, that is looking so good. Alright, I want to put just a couple more down here, and we're going to do some washes over this and maybe a one step brighter highlight. This one has got too hard of a line on it for me, so I'm going to remove that and put it back on, but try and smooth it out on the edges a little bit more. And that looks much better. I really like that dark one right there. It is very pretty on here. So I might make a couple of darker ones on here. Oops, took that completely off with my finger. I didn't want to do that. I think one out here. And I'm going to take a little bit more burnt sienna in there, so we'll just add one more little thing of burnt sienna, and we're going to work our way up this edge of the moon. I want it to be darker on this side of the moon, so we want that more raw sienna and lamp black mix on there, and bring some into the center. I'm going to grab a little more water, a little more raw sienna in my mix so it doesn't get too overpoweringly dark through here. And I think I'm going to take a little bit of this out here on the edge, which you probably can't see too much. Don't forget, we're having our bird and our limb and everything go across here, so I still want that to be just a scooch darker out here. We'll do 2 raw sienna, or burnt sienna. I hope I haven't been saying raw sienna this whole time. Burnt sienna and a little bit of black. A lot of water. We want that really sheer. We don't want it to be crazy dark. And we can put a little bit of this color through here. Just play around with your moon, adding these colors and shapes and textures. I'm going to go back one step to the burnt orange. Or maybe I should say back to the burnt orange step, because I need more orange down here. So I'm going to go with just straight burnt orange and put some of that in. Again, we're just tapping and wiggling and moving it around. We don't want heavy solid colors here. Remember, we're doing sheerer layers of color, and this is a more opaque color, so you definitely want to make sure that it is got some water in it. Plenty of water in it. Move this up the moon just a little bit. It's just a wash of color. Remember, washes are tinting water. That's all we're doing, tinting water, and then applying it to our surface. Now, aren't we getting a super cool looking moon? Okay, I want a few brighter, really extremely bright highlights. So either your yellow light or your bright yellow. You don't really have to have both colors probably for this project. I have used both colors in here, but I think if you just have one or the other, you're going to be just fine. And I think yellow light is a more brighter color. Got just a little bit of white and then yellow, so it's like a 2-to-1 mix, more of the yellow than the white, because we don't want this to be opaque. And we're just adding some brighter little places in here. turn your brush back and forth as you do the whole moon, not just when you're doing a specific color, but I like to turn my brush so that I can smooth out the other side of the paint and it's not leaving like a really crazy hard line on there. Okay, so now we need our yellow. We want some more yellow washes on here, so I'm just going to thin down some of my light yellow, or yellow light, with some water. And I'm going to put some of this up here. You want to make sure that your highlights you just put on are dry. That one right there is not completely dry, so I'll kind of go around it. So we're getting some nice yellow on here. I want to go over the whole moon with this yellow light. Clean water to make it more sheer. Now I've got a lot of water on the lower part down here with that yellow, so I'm going to go into my burnt orange and mix some of that in there with that and make that a washy color. So it's just a, it's the yellow and the burnt orange mixed together, and we want these to come up and meet. And be happy together. And I may have washed out a little bit too much of my dark stuff here. So I'm going to grab a paper towel and remove some of that down here. Because I feel like I washed out all of my dark stuff. So this is not cured on here yet, so I'm just taking some clean water, going over that and removing some of that. We don't want to bring the yellow all the way down, so in my instructions I'll just say to bring it down until it meets the dark colors, and then we will just leave it at that. So I think our moon is looking pretty good. This is a little bit of burnt orange. I feel like I lost a lot of that when I was washing in some other colors. Although, you know, like I said, a lot of this is going to be covered up, so stressing out about how it looks right now is not important. A little bit more darker over here. I think that's going to help it a little bit. Still just using the angle brush here, so we've only used a couple of brushes on this whole project. So I'm just tapping in some of my darks back in. I felt like when I washed over it, they just completely got lost. So this is the equal mix of black and burnt sienna. A little bit more dark down here. Now we can have a little bit of reflective sort of light on the other side of the moon if you would like to. I'm not sure what color I would use for that. This might be too bright. Just a little bit. This is the yellow light. So we can just kind of put a little bit of a glow there. And then again, some of that will be completely covered up, and wait and See it? It's a little wide. I don't want it to be quite that wide. And if you don't like that at all, then you can just take it away with your black and burnt sienna mix. I'm not sure I like it up here. And it seems a little bright right through there. So maybe just having it in that one spot is the best. Okay, I think that is going to finish up our moon. You can do so much more to this. You can get the paint wet and spatter it. Do a wash on here and then spatter it with some clean water, and it will cause some really cool effects in there, which I think would look amazing for this moon. But I think right there is where we're going to leave it. We're going to now get the rest of our pattern lines transferred on. Okay. Got my line drawings on here, so we are going to start adding some color on here. Basically we're going to be adding black, and I originally was going to start with the branch, but these words, I'm not even sure that word is straight. Nope, that word's not straight, so I'm going to have to retransfer it. So let me go retransfer that word real quick. Alright, I got them straightened out here, and we're just going to paint them in with some black paint. This is all going to be a silhouette on here, so just add a little bit of water to your black paint and get it a nice flowing consistency. And then when you paint letters in, they are simply a pressure and release technique. So you're either up on the tip of the brush or you're giving the brush pressure. So I'm going to get a nice rounded tip on my brush by rolling it on my palette to get it pointed. This is a small round, but I can also push down on the bristles and turn it into a small flat brush. Okay, so you want a good round brush that can do that. So what I like to do is I like to pull my lettering towards me, or down in a downward motion. I never want to go up or away from me because I have less control of the paintbrush. Now every teacher probably teaches lettering different, but lettering is basically just stroke work. You break it down into individual strokes. So I'm going to start up here on the tip, and this is fatter through here, so I'm going to start on the tip, and then I'm going to start giving a little bit of pressure to my brush, not any more pressure than that line that I drew. Come up on the tip and come to right there. And then I'll start. I'm going to make sure I got a good tip on my brush. Might have to go to a smaller round here. I'm not sure what size this one is because it has worn off. Okay, so right here I'm going to bring it around. Start here and go down, and then on the little tail thing we'll start on the tip here and give it some pressure and up on the tip, and just make a little tail. I need a little bit more water in my paint here. Okay, so this one here is a little bit more fat, but it's rounded at the top, so I'm going to fill in at the top of these letters because they're rounded. Then I want my brush to be flat, so I'm going to lay it in here and give it pressure. Start coming up on the tip. I need a little bit more pressure to fill in that. Come up on the tip, and there we go. It's all just learning how to control your brush. Pressure and release. Pressure and release up on that tip. Okay, so let's go to the O if I can see how I've drawn it in here. It's fatter through here, so pressure, release, release, release up on the tip. And then let's see, let me find my line drawing here. It's got a line that goes all the way down here, and then it goes over to the T like that. Okay, the T has a really thin line that goes across it, so we'll stay up on the tip and just draw that line in just as if we were drawing it in with a pen or a pencil. It's rounded at the top, so I'll start up there. Pressure. I'm starting to release pressure. I'm coming up on the tip of the brush. Kind of ran out of paint there. And I'm just going to pull this little piece right there. And then the E, right here, start at the tip top. Pressure, come up, start releasing, go to there, because we're going to come to this end now and bring that down and meet it. And then right here we're going to go around and have it meet. Okay, like we're a little messed up right there. Okay, so that is quote, and we will probably do a drop shadow on this to make it stand out, or do some highlighting on it. I haven't decided yet. Okay, now the word "the" is definitely very thin. If you have like paint pens that you like to use, you can definitely use these on here. This is very thin up on the tip for all of these letters. Just like you're writing it with a pen. And I definitely could go to a little bit smaller brush here, but I'm going to work it out and stay up on the very tip toe of this brush. We got the, and then these letters down here are super easy, so I'll just show you a couple of them and then I'll finish the rest off camera. They're just plain block letters, so you can really just outline them with your brush and then fill them in. So just outline like that, and then you'll just fill in. This is basic color book painting right here. And then you'll just fill each one of them in. And you may have to come back and do 2 coats on this to really get it a nice opaque black here, if you need to, on these letters down here because they're so much bigger. Okay, so I'll do one more of these down here and then I'll go finish them off camera. I drew my A a little bit tall there, so I am going to shorten it right there. I want to come make sure I drew a line here, so that's a good idea to do. Draw a line and then you kind of know where you're going, and that'll keep you from making your letters too long or too short. You could make a line above and below. Draw the first letter in and set it on the line. Draw your first letter in and then put a line above the top so you won't make them too high or too low. I can't even see my spot in the middle of that A right now. So let me go finish all of my other letters and we'll be back and we're going to work on the branch after this. Okay, I have my letters all done. I erased my graphite lines from around them. Now I did come back in and draw a line across the top and a line across the bottom just to make sure that my letters were all the same height. These 2 letters were not quite tall enough, so I had to bump them up a little bit. But since I drew both lines above and below, it made it much easier to make sure they were all the same height and they stayed straight on here. Just use your T-square, and come onto the side of it like this, and line it at the top and line it at the bottom. And then just erase your line when you're done painting your letters in. Okay, so now we're going to work on the limb and the crow. Everything right now is going to be painted in with black. So you're going to want a brush to paint in the limb. You're going to want probably a detail liner, a small round. The round that I just used probably is not small enough, so I am going to grab a smaller round. And we're going to start painting in our branch with just some black. this is all silhouette, so we don't have to, you know, do anything special to this. So our branch is going to come across here. And I am just going to, right now, just go right over those crow's feet and just retransfer those lines back in, because it's just too hard to try and paint around them, and I want to make sure that the branch is substantial enough to hold them. And there'll be another smaller branch maybe coming off behind back here, and a little one down here. And I'm not going to do probably too much more with this brush, because everything else I want to do with a smaller brush. So I'm going to grab my small round, which is a 1 round, and start creating some smaller branches coming off of these. Thin your paint down to inky consistency, because this will help tremendously. So I want this branch to continue on down the way here. Now don't thin your paint too much, and let's just start making it kind of jagged. Just play around with your movements of your limbs. They do not have to be, you know, perfect little limbs. This is, you know, kind of a haunted, eerie type, like a little bit fatter one coming off of here. So you're going to do it the same way you did your letters. You're going to press and release and come up on the tip and create some. See, I'm not even following the lines that I drew in there, but your pattern will have lines that you can follow if you prefer to do it that way. But I'd like for you to be just a little bit creative in what you are painting here. And I just give my brush a little bit of movement so that it is not all one-dimensional, you know? We want some really fun limb stuff coming off of here. Make that just a little bit fatter coming off of there. And some of these you may end up going over twice. And some of these, you know, you may not. So it really depends on the kind of look that you're going for. But this is one area where you can just really have so much fun, and that doesn't quite look right, so I'm going to remove some of that. I did not like that at all. And I feel like that's a lot there down at the end, so I might remove some of that. And then this little limb here, this is going to help draw your eye into the words over here. And they can cross each other, that would be good. I'm going to remove some of this over here. I'm not really too fond of how that's looking. Just dampen it, take a white eraser and very gently erase it, because if you get too carried away, you're going to remove all of your background colors. You're just removing that layer of paint that we put on there. And I'm going to try that again. So that one's too straight, so we're going to wiggle. I think once I erase some of my white lines on here, that's going to help a lot. So let me erase those. And now we can see where we might need to add some more. I'm definitely going to have to go over the black. That is the main branch. Now remember, you'll probably have your lines exactly where you want them. Who knows? But if you don't, and you're erasing, remember to erase away from your paint palette so that you don't get chunks of eraser stuff in your paint. Okay, I didn't erase everything here where the feet are. I think that's looking pretty good. So now we want to work on painting the bird in. I'm going to draw his feet back in real quick. Okay, I got my legs drawn in. I'm going to put a quick little second coat, a thin layer of paint back here on this. I want to make sure this is really opaque right here. Now once we paint the feet in, we probably won't be able to determine where the limb is until we add just a small little highlight on the feet. So I'm going to take my angle brush and paint in my crow. It's going to be all in black. Like I cleaned my brush out there. Surely don't want to ruin my brushes. Make sure you get that paint cleaned out of them. Go right up and over the line so you don't have to worry about coming back and erasing the line. Just lamp black, that's all we're using right here. I definitely need more water here. I'm a dragon. If you're a dragon, you don't have enough water. Crows have very like pointy feathers almost. Okay. You definitely want to apply a second coat on your crow whenever he is dry. I'm going to grab my bigger round brush here and paint in the legs. And then the feet, not that it's going to matter because you're painting black on top of black. They're fatter down here, and then the claw, the really long claw, comes off of it. So they've got like this fat section on the foot, and then the long claw comes off. And then we'll put one going behind. So a fatter section right through here, not great big fat, then this really skinny claw coming off. And then this one going around behind. Okay. So I'm going to let that dry and erase these lines down here. I probably, while I'm off camera, I'll just go ahead and get my second coat on my crow, make sure everything's nice and good and black, because then we're just going to add a few highlights on here on our crow and everything, and kind of tell where his eye is, you know, give him a little glow on his eye, and then I think we might be done with this one. We might shade a little bit more along the edge here. I haven't decided yet. I want to get it completely painted in. So let me get those second coats on. Alright, we're going to start adding some highlights on our black areas, and then we'll pretty much be done with this project. I've kind of drawn a line here where I want to establish where the eye is. Now, you can use a gray value to do your highlights, or you can use a value that has turquoise in it, or even the navy blue. So I think I'm going to try the turquoise, and I'm going to take some turquoise, go down here, and a little bit of black because I want to darken that, not quite that much, so wipe my brush off, grab a little bit more turquoise, and I'm just darkening the turquoise here for creating some highlights. We can come back in and brighten our highlights as we need to. Spritz this side with some water. I'm using a small chisel brush, a number 8. So I want to establish maybe a little bit more blue in there. I want to establish the eye here and see if this color is going to be bright enough. Wipe a little bit of the paint off because I don't want a ton going down here. And that's a ginormous eye. And it's not rounded at all. So let me take that off. I shouldn't have drawn that line on there, but I just kind of wanted you to see where I was going with that. So I'm really going to be up on the tippy toe and just make like a little C-stroke, I guess, like you're going to be filling in a circle, but you don't completely fill it in. And then I think I might blend it out just a little bit, get a little bit of water. I lost all my paint when I did that. And just blend it out into the eye just slightly. I probably will come back and wash over that with some black because that's much brighter than I want it to be. So I'm going to take that mix of turquoise and black, and it's going to be darker than what I have here. That's pretty bright, so I know I'm going to settle that down a little bit. And like I said, you can use a gray mix, just use white and black. And we want to start making some highlights on this side of our crow. I'm going to have to take that eye down because it's way too bright and it's very distracting. We can come back and brighten that here in a minute. I'm going to have to take some black and fill that in. It's a little wider than what I want. So we're going to start and add some highlights on this edge. And this is with turquoise and black, and just mix a color so that you can see it on top of that black. We don't want to see a lot of this color. I mean, we don't want it to stand on top of the black very brightly. We want it to kind of fade and settle down in there. And any place where we get it too wide, like I feel like that's too wide there, don't worry about it, because we can come back with our black at the end and clean all that up. Keep picking up paint on the wrong side of my brush. That's what happens when you use little brushes. You can never remember which side you have the paint on because you're using such a small amount. So it's like a gray-blue color, so just mix it, and then when you apply it, if it looks too bright, then you know you need to add a little bit more black into the mix. I'm going to come around here on the chest a little bit and put some there. Now I want to create the look of the wing out here. Maybe a few lines on here for some illusions of feathers. So that's where I'm going next. Grab water on your brush when you load it. Make sure you've got enough water so that you can move the paint. It won't just stay on the end of your brush because we're using such small amounts of paint here. And I am continuously mixing paint because it's such a small brush. All right, put a little bit here. On the leg, let's do a little bit on the claws. I'm going to erase those lines up on the wing because that can really distract us from what we're doing. Those are too bright of a line, so I'm going to get a little bit darker here, maybe. And just go over those a little bit. A little bit out here. But we really want the color to concentrate mostly on this side of the bird. And I want to take that highlight color, make sure it goes all the way to the edge wherever I'm putting it, because I don't want to see that separation line there, which I can still see. Let's put some of this on the tree limb. So I'm going to put some along this edge. And here's where it separates a little bit. Along that top edge there. And then I'm just going to chisel edge in, staying close to that top edge there, some of this mix. Just on the, I've just got it side loaded for a float, but I'm staying up on the chisel edge of the brush, just creating some thin lines. Now if you feel like you can't do this, you can certainly go to a detail liner and add some of these in here. Let me wide angle out just a little bit so I'm not getting you off camera. I think I'm going to go back and fill that in with black. I think I want that to be dark over there. Just add some of this on the chest here. Just a little dry brush stroking. You know, just got a tiny bit of paint on there. Anything that you don't like as you add it, you can come back with your black and take it away and tone it down and fix it. So don't be afraid to just put some paint on here, because you know the underpainting is black, so whatever we don't like we can very quickly and easily cover up. I want to put a little bit, now this is where you might want to go into a round brush, but on some of these ones that come out here, let's put a little bit of color of this color on them. And out here where it's more blue, we could add just a little bit more. We could add just a tiny bit of white in the mix. I mean the tiniest bit, because we don't want to turn it too gray. So just do this to just a few places, and I would really suggest that you get your round brush to do this. I am very used to staying up on the tip of my brush here, so I can do it comfortably with this small flat brush, but I want you to use the brush that you feel like you can maneuver in these areas the best. Alright, I'm going to mix some more here. That black and turquoise. Might need just a tiny bit more turquoise, or maybe a tiny drop of white. Not too much on these lower ones because they're not quite in the really highlight areas. We're going to also do our letters here. Now I want to brighten up just a little bit on the bird and a little bit on the branch, I think. Okay, before I brighten up a little bit here, I'm going to take some black and take this eye down a little bit. I want it to be just that small little line on there. So you can get a small little round or detail and do the eye. That might be very helpful in that situation. So I'm going to mix some more of my turquoise and black, and this time I'm going to add a little bit more of the turquoise in there. And we'll just create, maybe that wasn't enough turquoise, I can't tell the difference. That's pretty wide, so I'm going to come back with some black and take that down. And just create a few little bright spots. Don't do everything or as big as you did before, but we want a little bit brighter. Okay, let's put a little bit of that brighter on the tree limb. I'm going to put a small amount in the eye here, just right there, just a little touch, a little kiss. When you build your highlights and shadows, you always want to get smaller with each layer. You don't ever want it to come out as far as it did on the first layer, or completely cover up your entire first layer. So this one will definitely be just upper parts of the branch. Let me put a little bit of that darker mix down here. Grab some black here. Take that down just a scooch. And I think I'll bring some black back up in here where I feel like I've kind of muddied this up a little bit. So I'll just stroke some black in there. And that will help break that up a little bit, and I definitely want to go into this just a little bit and thin that. And I got a little bit of paint outside in my moon, so I'm going to gently erase that with just a tiny little drop of water. I feel like this got a little too far over, so let me take some of that down. And I might wash over this just a little bit. Okay, I'm wanting that turquoise to be just a little bit brighter. Little tiny bit on the eye. This is just straight turquoise now. You see how I'm just doing small, tiny amounts. Small. Okay, I think I'm going to come back in with my black. Maybe go underneath this just a little bit. I think I'm going to shape this back here a little bit different. I don't like that pointy little feather sticking out there. There, I like that much better. Okay, I want to put some straight turquoise on the limb now. And this time I probably will come in with my detail liner. And add some of this color. On some of the other branches. I'll just go with my small round since it's laying here. You want to thin your paint a little bit to a nice flowy consistency, and then you're just going to hit a couple of spots on those branches. Don't get carried away. This is where we can really like lose it. little bright there. I have to take that down just a scooch with some black. Just straight turquoise. Can't tell where my little branches are. So just a little kiss of turquoise. Even down here we can do just a couple. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm gonna fix his legs a little bit right there, right here. I feel like it got a little out of hand, so I'm gonna go back to that turquoise and black mix and try and settle that in there just a little bit better. And I think I'm going to come into the black, just black, side-loaded black, because this side of the leg should actually be dark. So if our blue color got too far over, let's kind of settle that down. And then I can come back with just that turquoise and give it its bright little swoosh across there. Okay, that looks much better. Alright, so what's great about doing a silhouette is that anywhere where you feel like you don't like the shape that you painted, it's very easily fixable. And I felt like that needed a little bit more fix on it. I think I'm going to bring some of my branches over my letters, but I'm not done with my letters yet, so I'm going to wait to do that. And yeah. Sorry, I forgot I didn't have the camera on. This is turquoise with a teeny tiny little bit of white. And we'll just, I think using a round brush would be best here, except on the legs. I'm just going to kiss the legs a little bit. And this is going to get us our brightest little highlights on here. So we first did the mix, turquoise and black. Then we did turquoise. Now we're doing turquoise and white. So it's just a 3-layer step, getting it. I'm going to mix a 2 to 1, 2 white to 1 turquoise, and that will get me a nice bright color on here. Again, you're just touching this in a few places. Don't let it get just ridiculously carried away. Just a few places. I'm just skimming the brush across there, just lightly. It's thin down with water, so I can almost dry brush with this. black here. I'm going to take that down just a scooch. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to call our bird and our limb pretty done until I add some lines coming over our letters. So let's get ready to finish our letters out. Okay, I'm mixing some paint here. I have turquoise with a little bit of white, and now I'm going to add just a little bit of black in there, and that might be too much black. And dirty up this blue color. That was almost too much black. And I think I want to put a little more turquoise in there. I just want it to be this muted turquoise color. So tiny bits of black at a time, and you'll get this like dirty turquoise color. And we're going to use this color for our letters. So on these two words, I'm going to do a drop shadow. I'm going to try and do it on the right side. I am so used to doing it on the left side, I'm not sure I can do it on the right side, but I will give it a shot. So I'm going to take my paint, and everything's going to be on the left side, and that's way too much paint. Let me erase that off of there. We want a nice thin line here, not anything that's thick or heavy. So I'll clean my brush off and reload it. Your paint has a little bit of water in it. You can do this with a detail liner, or you can not do it at all. So I'm going to go on this side. Pressure. That wasn't too smooth, so let me see if I can smooth that out. Grab some water in my paint here. Okay, so I'm going to go on the inside here, and I'll go on the outside here, and then this will get its highlight along that edge. This one looks like it could be smoother. Alright, I'm going to go along the top and down the right side, across the top, and down the right side. And then let me see my O. We're going to go inside here. And this is going to come across. Stay up on the tip of your brush. Is right here, and the T go across the top. You have to have your paint a flowing consistency, or this is not going to work for you. Up on the very tippy toe of your brush. Oop, that one wasn't quite right. Let me erase that. Wasn't even close to that line. Grab a little bit of water in my paint because it's a little bit too thick. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the word the, right side. Top, right side, inside, on the top. Okay, so now we can really see those words much better, and that gives us a nice little shadowy effect to it. Now on these, the word Raven, I'm going to try and dry brush this color. My brush is actually wet, but I'm loading it up with paint, and I'm just going to touch and drag down these letters. This will help give them a little bit of a spooky effect. Just load your brush up, touch and drag. Do not give your brush any pressure whatsoever. Come down this R a little bit. Just lightly touch and drag the brush. You can use a much bigger brush than I'm using here. I think this gives such a super cool effect. So we're going to come down at the back part. And a little bit on that one. We're not filling in the letter, so don't fill in the letter. Of course, they're black, so if you get more on here than you want, you can easily fix that. Okay, my V here, I need to go that edge a little bit more. That's going to help that V look better, and my A as well. I need to come all the way out to the edge. And that's going to help that letter look better, and oh my gosh, I love that. Now we can brighten even more on our letters here by mixing a little bit of white. Let me put some more white out here in with that mix, and I'm just going to brush mix because I'm just going to be using such a small amount here. So I'm just going to take a little bit of white on my brush and mix it right over here in my more wetter paint, and just lighten it up. So you want to be able to see a color value change there. Wipe my brush off because I got tons of stuff in my paint and my brush. And then I'm going to go here and drag a little bit of this, keeping it more to the top. This is not pure white, so don't make it bright white. We still want to see some of that black in there, so if you're covering up too much of your black, just drag some black in there, okay? I also want to take this, if I can, and just put a little bit on here in a couple places. I might add just a little bit more white to the mix so I can see it. And just give a little highlight. This is all just downward strokes. Brighten that just a tiny bit. And you're not filling in the whole thing, so don't fill in the whole area that you did before. If you do not feel comfortable doing that, then don't worry about it. But I think that is looking really, really good. Might add just a touch more white into that mix. Okay, that looks better. And again, if I feel like I've covered up too much, the black is there to help fix that. But I think that looks really good. I am loving that. I love my moon. Now, can you see the depth in the moon since we put the bird in front of it? I think this has turned out to be just a beautiful, fun Halloween piece, and I'm extremely happy with how it looks. And again, if you don't have enough darkness out here around your edges, you can just float a little bit of black around there. And we're pretty much done with this project. I have enjoyed painting this so much with you guys. You guys take your time on your moon. Create those layers. Create that depth. Don't forget if you feel like you've lost a color, just go back to it and add it on top. The layering of the moon is key important because the rest of it's just black silhouette. So the moon is really what is setting this off. So thank you all so much for painting with me. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'm always available to answer them and help you out. I appreciate every one of you. Give me a thumbs up if you like this project, and I will see you guys all on the next one. Bye bye, everybody.